Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and today I want to talk to you guys a little bit about the front squat, because now that I'm doing front squats right now, the question comes up of why the front squat. Front squat's misunderstood by a lot of people. A lot of people feel like it does dramatically more work for the quads. All of this, it's a better overall quad exercise than the back squat. And while that's true to some extent, the studies have shown for one head of the quadriceps, it seems to be superior, not for the entire set of quads. And conversely, it doesn't work things like the hamstrings or the hips quite as much. It's pretty similar, but again, we're talking very, very small differences here. It's slightly more anterior chain dominant than posterior chain dominant, but not by a large margin. And the overall muscles worked in the lower body between the two is very, very similar. Although the front squat does engage certain parts of the core and other things a little more effectively, it makes it a slightly different exercise in a way. Now, that being said, why the front squat? Well, in my case, I haven't been squatting. I quit squatting just like I quit benching. I've been focusing on mostly deadlifting and overhead pressing. So because of that, I haven't been squatting. I haven't been benching. I started benching again. Obviously, I started doing a little bit of front squatting again over a month ago. And I've done a few sets here and there. And now I'm doing an actual dedicated front squat day every week. So we really kind of come to the question of, now that I've started squatting again, why am I selecting the front squat? For a couple of reasons, and these are reasons a person might pick it also. It's not necessarily the best exercise for everyone. In my case, I do a lot of beltless training. One of the most difficult aspects of training without a belt is the fact that we tend to not have as stable of a core without a belt around it. In other words, we struggle to keep our torso as upright. By utilizing the front squat, which tends to pull you forward, it reinforces keeping your torso upright when squatting. So for me, now that I'm learning to squat again, because if you guys recall, I've had over a 500-pound raw squat while on YouTube in the past. And now that I'm rebuilding a squat, I really want to make sure that I have those mechanics down, being able to go deep, being able to go ass to grass while keeping my torso more upright. Because again, I want to do a lot of beltless training, and I'm probably going to start back squatting again eventually without a belt and not use one at all. The front squat will help me train my core and my thoracic erectors and everything else to be a lot more stable. It'll train them to be a lot more stable. So that's a good thing for carryover. In other words, the front squat, even for people who are already back squatting, can be a fantastic accessory exercise. If forward lean is a bit of a problem for you, the front squat is actually a very, very, very valuable training tool. Now, in my case, because when I get back to back squatting, I don't want this to be a problem, I will be utilizing the front squat. And that's a good reason for someone to use the front squat, either to train to prepare for that or to correct a problem that already exists. It's a very valuable exercise. Now, that being said, because I'm looking at the different accessory aspects, let's say you're someone like me. I value the deadlift and overhead press a lot. I think the push press and deadlift are two of the most important exercises out there. I've put my focus on them for the entirety of this year up until now. Now, that being said, even though I'm adding more exercises in and becoming more diverse with all my stuff, because I want to leave open the possibility of powerlifting again, the front squat actually has fantastic carryover to both the push press and the deadlift. In fact, a lot of deadlifters who are training for the deadlift, who aren't going to squat in meets, either they're doing push-pull meets or they're doing deadlift only, a lot of them will switch over to front squats, simply because it trains the thoracic erectors a bit more. It trains the thoracic erectors more. And therefore, that makes it a very valuable squat variation for training your deadlift. And it's not to say that the squat and the deadlift don't help each other, because they do. Getting better at your squat will usually improve your deadlift, and getting better at your deadlift will usually improve your squat. There is an association between the two. It's not an absolute one, but they tend to work pretty much the same muscles in the body with some exceptions. So therefore, if you get a muscle bigger and stronger that's involved in one exercise, you're probably getting a muscle that's bigger and stronger that could be a possible weak link in the other. So in other words, they tend to improve each other. The front squat focuses a little more on some of the muscles that are more likely to be a weakness on the deadlift. So therefore it makes it a great accessory exercise for someone specifically trying to improve their deadlift. Same thing with your push press. Look at the starting position on push press. Look at how the exercise is performed. It should be obvious, depending upon what version of the push press you're using, the front squat will help with some more than others. One of the things that I always notice is that the rack position becomes a lot easier on your wrists on your overhead pressing once you start front squatting, because when you're having to rack the weight in the front squat, it carries over a lot, and that seems to strengthen all of that up and strengthen your wrists and everything tremendously for all of your overhead pressing endeavors. So it has good carryover there as well. So it makes it a really, really useful exercise. Now the other thing to consider is that training the back squat can prepare you for the front squat. So or vice versa. So in my case, I'm coming back and using it, and so when I switch back over to the back squat, it should allow my back squat to be relatively strong. And so again, if someone has a reason why they want to take some time off from the back squat, the front squat is a totally acceptable substitute. It should allow you to be relatively strong on your back squat still and come back to lifting similar weights, if not more than you were before, in a very short period of time if you've been doing it. Now, another thing to consider is that a lot of athletes like the front squat, and that's because it does carry over better to certain sports, grapplers, MMA people, things like that. You'll find that the front squat is very, very popular in a lot of mixed martial arts circles, wrestling circles, things like that. And a lot of that just has to do with the position it puts your hands in and everything. Again, can strengthen wrists and stuff in addition to being a full body exercise and a lower body exercise. So a lot of them like it. And then we kind of come to another point of why I'm using it specifically. And that is that I need to regain squat strength. I need to rebuild things like my quads. My quads have atrophied. Now we know the best way to increase muscle mass, whether it's new muscle mass or regaining old muscle through muscle memory, workload. Workload is the key. Now we know that using a weight that's lighter on the front squat gives the same quad activation as a heavier back squat. We come back to another point. The workload is the same with a lighter weight, and that's been confirmed in EMG data. So here's the thing. The front squat creates less axial loading. In other words, less compressive force on the spine. I do a lot of axial loading exercises. All right, I do a lot of deadlifting. I do a lot of overhead pressing. I'm also cutting right now. Okay, now this is an interesting point, and this is one of the areas where I think the front squat, just like the deficit deadlift and other things, really shine. When you are cutting, you have less recovery. And I think anyone agrees with that. Anyone who's ever bulked versus cut realizes you don't recover as easy from training when you're in a calorie deficit and you're losing weight, even if it's really slow. The front squat, because of less axial loading, is a bit easier to recover from, slightly easier to recover from. In other words, you can do more volume with it and still recover. Now, for people who are trying to lose body weight, that's a big deal. Field athletes, that's a big deal. It's another reason a lot of athletes push in this direction. Athletes who have to do a lot of conditioning work, they've got to use their recovery ability wisely. The front squat simply compresses the spine a little less than the back squat for the same amount of sets and rep and rate of perceived exertion. So when you look at it from that perspective, it can be slightly easier to recover from. Now, is this necessarily going to make or break you? No, of course not. Because the back squat is a fantastic exercise. And you know what? There's nothing wrong with using the back squat. In fact, most people should be doing the back squat. Just the front squat has some performance elements that are a little different. And in my case, I'm already getting enough posterior chain work because I'm going to be doing just as much deadlifting as I am front squatting. So in a case of someone like myself who knows that they're currently posterior chain dominant, the front squat can become a valuable tool to build the anterior chain up a bit, the quads and all of that. It can be a very valuable tool for doing that, for staying more upright, building your core better. All of these things, and it does so with slightly less taxation on your recovery. So in a situation like that, it makes sense that the front squat could become useful, and it may not be the ideal lift for your given situation. Right now, it's pretty good for mine, but that's based upon my specific situation and what I'm doing with my training. And that's really all any of us can do, is make a realistic assessment of what our goals are, what our maximum recoverable volume is, what our minimum effective volume is on all these different things, and balance them out based upon the performance elements we want at any given time in our training. And that's really the best any of us can hope for. And we just have to do our best to make intelligent choices when we're trying to do our exercise selection. And in my case, the front squat makes sense for me right now for building up my overall squat strength. Alright guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.